146 Alpha Victor, you have to pay attention or you have to get out of my Delta. Climb and maintain 1,500.
A few moments later.
We'll hold for this guy, bring this buffer 9. Yeah, he's a disaster. 6 Alpha Victor, why are you crossing my runway?
Imagine if all those things happened in just one flight. Now imagine all of those things happened in just one portion of your flight, the very end portion of it, and that's what happened to this guy. This guy was flying here into Teterboro. Now I've never flown into Teterboro Airport, but I have flown into Newark, which is just right here down the road. And that is some of the busiest airspace that I've ever flown to anywhere in the world. You have some of the best controllers. They're very fast thinking and able to help you resolve problems if you need to. They keep the traffic in very tight, and it's one of the very few places in the world where I don't mind being really close in because I know how well they monitor that airspace, but it is very busy. If I've flown with someone who's never flown into Teterboro, Newark, that area before, I tell them before the flight even takes off, I don't care who I'm flying with, hey, have you flown into this area before or recently? And if they say no, then I let them know just exactly what's gonna go on so they have an idea of just how fast the traffic is gonna be moving. So this controller starts speaking different with this guy, and you're gonna see why here in just a minute. Check this out.
Piper 146 Alpha Victor, you read me now? Mike up close.
For 146 Victor, Teterboro Tower, squawk 0324. For 146 Alpha Victor, squawk, reset transponder, squawk 0324.
0324.
Now you may have heard, or maybe you didn't even notice it, this tone that was in the background while these two pilots were talking. And what happens is that tone, which I'm going to play for you in a second, signifies that someone is stepping on somebody else. Meaning, if I'm transmitting air traffic, I'm transmitting as a pilot to air traffic control, and somebody else gets onto that frequency and starts talking over me, it makes that tone. That tone means you're getting stepped on, somebody's stepping on you. But if you're transmitting, you don't really know. You only hear it if you're one of the other people listening in on that frequency. Listen here as this tone comes up when air traffic control is talking.
For 146 Victor, Teterboro Tower, squawk 0324.
And I bring that up because it's going to be a common thing in this video, which leads me to believe that while air traffic control is talking to this pilot decides to just start interrupting him and talking over him. The other thing that you heard is the controller gave him a new squawk code. When you start flying into a lot of airspaces that are more busy, you get a squawk code. That allows for the air traffic controllers to better identify your aircraft. So it's a 4-digit code. You've seen it in some of my vlogs. Maybe we put that code in there. That's all that was. It's nothing really significant, but it might be that they're giving it to him because he was just flying where he doesn't have air traffic control watching him, but then he needs that when he gets in there, or sometimes it happens in the middle of your flight. Air traffic control has another one that's the same or similar, and I don't know how that code gets generated, but they said, hey, this is your new code. And I've had it happen 3 or 4 times on a flight. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. All right, that's the stepping on thing, that's the squawk thing. It's not really relevant to this, but that stepping on is very important. Listen to what happens here throughout this video.
6 Alpha Victor, fly heading 200.
200.
6 Alpha Victor, verify flying 200, turn right, fly heading 200.
6 Alpha Victor, climb, maintain 1,500 immediately.
That me? 146 Alpha Victor.
146 Alpha Victor, you have to pay attention or you have to get out of my Delta. Climb and maintain 1,500. 146 Alpha Victor, you're making a left turn. We see you making a left turn. Continue your left turn all the way around, heading 190. You are descending. You have to climb.
Okay, you heard 2 different controller voices here. There's 2 possibilities. One, you have a controller doing a swap over. Sometimes when you're, especially in airspace like this where it's busy all the time, they do this swap over. And I want to say it's every 20 minutes, but I'm not 100% sure because the mental energy that it takes to watch all of these planes and everything that's going on is a lot. They want to have these people rested. I want to have those people rested. If you're flying on a plane, you want to have those people rested. They have a lot that's going on. So they do these swap overs very frequently so your brain can be chilled out. So this second voice could be that they're swapping over, or it could be that a supervisor is stepping in. That could be two potential things too. You have sometimes a person in training, just like everything, you have on-the-job training. Well, you could have a supervisor who's sitting in the background that has the ability to step over that controller and talk over them. That's one possibility. Or you also have in situations the overall supervisor, if that guy's just done with normal training, that overall supervisor who is there. That way, if they see something that is a problem, they're able to interject and override that person. So it's just a second layer of protection. So that supervisor could be one of those two things, or it could be a swap over. I don't know yet, but my guess is that that's a supervisor stepping in. Now remember earlier when I said, hey, listen for the tone, in case you missed it, here the pilot sounds like he starts talking over the controller again.
Turn right by heading 200.
The problem is that if you are the pilot and you start talking, you can't hear what they're saying to you. You can hear nothing. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like you hear your voice. So the problem is if they're trying to give you immediate instructions and you're just talking over them, you're not getting the immediate instructions. Now they have to repeat them. And now you're wasting a lot of time. You're wasting time for the other pilots that are in the area that also need to get given instructions by air traffic control. So instructions have to be given twice. You don't hear them the first time. Maybe they have to give them 3 different times. So now you could see how this would be a problem. So you have to let air traffic control finish their transmission before you talk. And it's pretty common to be able to listen and know when that instruction is over before you start talking. I'm not saying I've never stepped on somebody, because of course I have, but not at this level where it's like every time you want to say something, you just key up the mic and start talking. That's too much. The other issue is a very serious call that the air traffic controller makes right here.
You are descending, you have to climb.
So first they're confused about what heading he's flying, and then they're making that call. Usually they'll say like low altitude alert, and again, but it could depend based off of where you're at. But they're saying basically, you're not at the altitude we need you to be at, you need to go up. So he can't hold a heading and he can't hold an altitude. Those are kind of the two most important things about when you're flying an airplane, but he's not holding that altitude and he's going down. And obviously that's a problem for air traffic control. For one, they don't want you to hit a building or hit somebody or crash your plane into the ground or into a mountain. Or two, there's other planes that are flying at that altitude. Now he's saying get up to 1,500. So I'm guessing they're worried about him hitting the ground or hitting something there. So that is a bad sign. If you're confused about your altitude and your heading, it's kind of a problem.
South of Victor, turn immediately left, heading up 200, immediately.
I'm turning that way right now.
South of Victor, you have one more time to get this right or you have to get out of this airspace.
Yeah, I'm turning that way now.
6 Alpha Victor, I need you to turn right, please. You're going towards my final on the runway 19er, so fly heading 200, please, for now. For 6 Alpha Victor, Keyboard Tower.
Let's see about
6 Alpha Victor, you see traffic is show final runway 19er citation. Do you have that traffic in sight?
I don't. He's behind me now. I have him in sight now, yes. I got him.
6 Alpha Victor, roger. I need you to climb to 1,500. 6 Alpha Victor, climb to 1,500 and turn left. Fly overhead midfield at 1,500, please.
Turning downward now for 24, is that right?
South Victor, negative, sir. Fly the heading we told you to. South Victor, stay heading.
Right now I'm at 30.
Okay, now this is going to sound a little nitpicky based off of everything else that's going on in this video, but this is something that's very important to have strong discipline in doing this, so that way when things start to go wrong, your muscle memory is to do it the right way. And that's this right here.
I'm turning that way right now.
Okay, clearly we know that that voice is the voice of the guy that we're dealing with. Obviously trimmed out some of the other stuff, but that voice is the person that we're dealing with. If you're an air traffic controller, you know that voice, you know who it is. However, he's not saying his tail sign. Usually you have a call sign, which is like Boeing 123, or you have your tail number if you're just flying in a normal general aviation aircraft like what he's doing. So you would say the tail number of your aircraft. And that's to verify that air traffic control gave you the instruction and you, in that specific aircraft, heard the instruction is going to comply with it. By him not saying that, even though we know exactly whose voice this is, and I've made this mistake more than once, but even with something like this, you need to be able to read back that with your tail numbers, so that way it's very clear who is responding to this instruction. Because there has been times where I've been flying and they say, let's say, turn heading 200, and another plane that's listening to the same frequency, because where there's multiple planes, he thinks that's his assignment. So he'll say, heading 200, Boeing 123. And the controller goes, no, no, no. Boeing 123, stay on your current course. Boeing 456, you are heading 200. So that is the other reason why you'd want to have that readback. Obviously, we know this guy's voice, and when you have something like this, where you have two people paying you a lot of attention, they're very focused on your voice and what you're saying. But it's a very dangerous habit to get into. Now, another controller has to jump in again and say, right heading 200 again, and they're trying to say it as calmly as possible.
So fly heading 200, please, for now.
And as someone who's been working and flying in that airspace for years, I know the normal speed that they normally talk to people, and it is not that speed. It is normally a very uncomfortably fast speed because of how tight it is with the number of planes that they're trying to get in there. They got Teterboro, they got Newark, they got JFK, LaGuardia. They got a lot of planes in a very small area, and there's a lot of traffic going in there. They're talking very, very fast. I think if I was an international pilot and my language skills were not very good in English, I would struggle, because I've seen American pilots that grew up speaking English that have been flying for a long time, they struggle. So this is a very fast-moving airport, and these controllers are talking very slow to help accommodate this guy. Even though they're used to talking fast with everybody, they will still try to accommodate you, but you have to be able to comply with their instructions, because now you have, I'm pretty sure, a supervisor and a regular air traffic controller talking to this guy, and they're clearly irritated with what's going on. And they should be, because the guy isn't holding his altitude, but more importantly, they asked him to fly heading 200.
So fly heading 200, please, for now.
To put it in perspective, they want him to fly heading 200. On a compass, that would have him flying this direction. Yet, when they ask him what he's flying, he says he's flying 030.
Right now I'm at 30.
Which means he's flying almost exactly the opposite direction that they're asking him to fly. So he's flying at the wrong altitude, which is unsafe for the area, and then he's flying at basically the complete opposite direction of what the air traffic controllers want him to fly, and then he thinks he's getting set up to do a downwind on runway 24. This is the airport where all this is happening, and I haven't flown into this particular airport, but like I said, I've flown into Newark, which is just down the road. So I'm very familiar with this airspace. He thinks he's being set up for runway 24. He's wanting to do this, which is to fly a downwind onto runway 24. However, nobody has said that to him. My guess is that he's parking somewhere over here, and so he's hoping that he gets this runway, but you can't just make that assumption. A lot of times when I'm flying, especially when I have a very heavy aircraft and it's, let's say, maybe a high altitude, or maybe the parking is on that side because that's what I want. Earlier on in the flight, not at this stage, but early on the flight, I will say, when I check in with the approach controller, I will say, hey, Boeing 123, we're checking in with information X-ray, request runway 12 for performance. Meaning, I need that runway because I'm big, fat, and heavy, and I want to not have my brakes get really hot. They might give it to you, they might not, but you can request it. He's not going to have a performance issue. He might want that runway because that's the one he's familiar with, and that's good for him for parking, but it has to work for everybody. They're not going to shut down the whole airport unless you have an emergency. They're not going to shut down the whole airport so you can get the runway that you like just because you like it. That's not how it's going to work. And the last thing you want to do is have someone planning to land on a runway like this, but everybody else is landing here. Right now, if you're an air traffic controller, you're thinking, how do we safely get this person on the ground and out of my airspace and out of possibly endangering all the other people that are around them? How do we get them on the ground that's safe for them and reduces my stress and workload, because there's a lot of attention going to him, which is very dangerous because that means he's getting a lot of attention and other people are getting less attention. It's kind of not an ideal situation because there could be something else going on, and you would think this is probably the end of how bad it is, but it actually gets worse. Check this out.
6 Alpha Victor, turn right. 6 Alpha Victor, turn immediately right, 090. Turn right heading is 090, immediately. 6 Alpha Victor, respond.
Turning right immediately, 466.
6 Alpha Victor, you cannot fly in this airspace. You cannot fly in this airspace.
Can I land? I'm a tenant here at Teterboro.
6 Alpha Victor, you cannot land here if you cannot comply with our instructions. You cannot. Maintain 1,500.
Exit 549, ILS 19. Let me in now, please.
549, reduce the final approach speed, and number 2, the field traffic short final at Phenom.
Slow to final approach speed for 55 for 9.
Runway 19 clear to land. Snyder Fox Trial ready for departure with Presidio.
And now I'm a tenant here. I've been here for 14 years.
So now you have exec jet, which is a private jet charter. They could be going to pick somebody up, they could be dropping somebody off, they could be parking the plane, doesn't really matter. They're trying to come in and land. And so they're trying to check in. While he's talking, this other gentleman is getting on the radio and talking over him. So in this very congested airspace, you have this guy now interrupting air traffic controllers while they're trying to give them instructions, and you have a pilot trying to talk to get them clearance in order so he can land, and he's being interrupted as well. So he's just messing up all kinds of different things. He's creating just total chaos in this airspace, which is why some people shouldn't be flying planes. It's a privilege. Just like riding on a plane is a privilege, despite what some people might think, flying a plane is still also a privilege. Now, it's strange to me that the controller keeps suggesting that he won't be allowed to land there.
6 Alpha Victor, you cannot land here if you cannot comply with our instructions. You cannot.
Because I've never heard somebody say that, like, oh, you're almost about to not be able to land here. I've never really heard that before. But then I think they're also considering, hey, do they want to put this person in a bunch of other airspaces and make a bigger problem? He is obviously familiar with that airport. He said he's been a tenant there for 14 years, but you would want to get that person on the ground as quickly as possible and not send them to a place they're unfamiliar with. Because when you go to a place that you're unfamiliar with, you may not be familiar with where to park, where to go. You're creating chaos in the airport that you've been flying out of for 14 years. What would it be like if you sent him somewhere he was completely unfamiliar with? What would that look like? It's not going to be safer. In case you didn't catch it, he said this right here about being a tenant.
I'm a tenant here. I've been here for 14 years.
If I'm an air traffic controller in this situation, and I've never been one or have any training or any desire to do that, but there's the option for them to declare an emergency for this pilot and say, hey, we're declaring an emergency for you. We're clearing out all the other airspace. We're just going to let you land on any given runway. Just get on the ground and get out of here. Because of all the chaos that he's creating, he has the potential of doing something where he flies into another plane or flies into the ground and kills himself. So they have the option to do that, but they keep threatening him like, we're about to not let you land here, which isn't really helping the overall circumstance. But I understand their frustration. I would be extremely frustrated if I was flying in this airspace. I'm trying to get my information to get the ability to come in and land, and this guy's just clogging up the airways and is stepping on people, is not listening to the instructions, isn't flying at a safe altitude or a safe heading. Like all the basic things that pilots need to be able to do, he's doing none of them. So I understand their frustration, but I also understand the reality of, do you want to send this guy to another spot? So it's a tricky spot for the air traffic controllers. But if I'm flying and I'm hearing somebody do something like this to me,
55, 49, ILS 19.
Let me in now, please.
Runway 19 clear to land. Snyder Fox Trial ready for departure with Presidio.
And now
I can only imagine that the blood pressure of these two controllers are going through the roof, and they're putting more and more attention on him, which is making it unsafe for everybody else because that guy's getting all the attention and nobody else is getting attention because they need to safely get him on the ground. Now, when a plane has an emergency, there is a lot of attention given to that plane. Hey, I've lost both engines. That happened in this area, remember? So I've lost both engines. Now, hey, I need a lot of attention. That makes sense. This is totally self-created. That's a lot different. And you would think it's towards the end, but no, it keeps getting worse. Check this out.
Number 6 Alpha Victor, Roger. If you look ahead and to your left is a latitude on a 2-mile final. Do you have that traffic in sight?
yeah, I got him.
Number 6 Alpha Victor, plan to follow that traffic to land runway 19er.
Okay, I'll follow him and land on 19, 46 Alpha Victor.
6 Alpha Victor, do you have runway 19er in sight?
I do.
Number 6 Alpha Victor, runway 19er, clear to land. You're inside the traffic at longitude on a 4-mile final for runway 19er.
Okay, I got it. 46 Alpha Victor.
Number 6 Alpha Victor, runway 19er, clear to land.
Clear to land on 19, 46 Alpha Victor.
Okay, this is the equivalent of hand holding. You have this controller talking very slow and being very precise in what he's saying because he knows at this point this is going to be a problem. There's going to be an investigation of what happened here. But either way, he wants to get this guy safely on the ground. He's having a lot of patience, talking very slow. Do you see the plane? Do you see the runway? You got everything? You sure? Okay, come on in and put your plane down. He's being very gentle. Now you think the guy's on the ground now. Everything is over and it's safe? No, it keeps getting worse. Listen to this.
November 6 Alpha Victor, turn right on Echo. That's the first taxiway right there. Turn right on Echo. Contact ground point 9er, 121.9er. November 6 Alpha Victor.
121.9. Playing the ground, for
549. Hold your position, please.
We'll hold for this guy, Victor 549.
Yeah, he's a disaster.
One thing that you never want to hear air traffic do when they refer to you is call you a disaster. What it sounds like here is a plane is on Lima. I'm guessing it is a private jet coming out of this area here. They're going up Lima in order to take off on runway 19. Or they had just landed and they were taxiing to park. Our pilot, who's clearly struggling with just about everything, is supposed to get off of taxiway Echo in contact ground. Listen to what they say.
November 6 Alpha Victor, turn right on Echo. That's the first taxiway right there. Turn right on Echo. Contact ground point 9er, 121.9er.
That means he's to move to here and then stop moving and call ground, 121.9er. So he's supposed to get off, clear the runway, which I get is now a little bit different than some other exitways, but this is the airport that he's been flying to for 14 years. What I'm referring to is these little bars right here. Technically, the plane has to be clear of these bars, which is a little bit further down the runway and kind of close to this intersection. But either way, he needs to clear that and then stop and contact ground, not just keep on rolling with whatever sounds good and feels good for him. And then you have that corporate jet stop, and you heard air traffic control tell them to stop. And the problem is that if you're flying a corporate jet, let's just say he didn't stop because he was given clearance, what it sounds like, to move all the way up that taxiway. If he'd gone and then that jet had crashed into him, not only would there be a lot of damage and the passengers be upset and that guy possibly be injured, but that pilot in the corporate jet is now going to have an accident on his record. It's a dollar amount situation, and on a corporate jet, it's going to be very expensive to repair it, so it's going to be considered an accident, which means for the rest of that pilot's career, everywhere he goes, he's going to have to say, yes, I have an accident, and here's what happened. Now, okay, is it a crazy accident? Is it his fault? No, a guy came off the taxiway and drove into my plane, but you're going to have to explain it, and so you're going to potentially have the option of not getting jobs because you have an accident on your record. You're gonna have to keep telling that story again and again. It's not a good situation, and nobody wants to have a plane crash or have that headache. So he jumps on the brakes before air traffic control says anything to him. You could kind of hear that in the pilot's voice. But the controller talks to him, not the guy who's violating what he's supposed to be doing, not that guy. And so because he's like, he's got to give instructions to somebody he knows is going to be able to follow them, so he says that to the corporate jet, which sounds like he was stopping anyways. So he should have been here, and now what they're going to do is they're going to bring him across and have him hold here of this runway. You'd like to think this is the end of it, but it's going to keep going. Check this out. This is crazy.
Seawell ground. This is Piper 146 Alpha Victor. Landed at 19, got off at Echo, and I'm going into Signature West.
And 146 Alpha Victor, make the right turn on Gulf and hold short of runway 24.
Turn on Gulf and hold short of 24. 46 Alpha Victor. I don't believe this. The plane doesn't stop.
Again? 6 Alpha Victor, what are you doing?
6
Alpha Victor, why are you crossing my runway?
Didn't fix the brakes. I'm sorry.
6 Alpha Victor, hold your position right now. 6 Alpha Victor, hold your position right now.
Putting the emergency brake on.
Put the emergency brake on and hold your position and let me know when you're ready to talk to me.
I'm ready to talk to you. I don't even believe this.
146. Your phone number down?
It's going right in here to Signature West.
146 Alpha Victor, stand by. 146 Alpha Victor, possible pilot deviation. Advise when you're ready to copy down a phone number. 146 Alpha Victor, advise when you're ready to pilot deviation.
Go ahead, you can read the number.
Can't hold a heading, can't hold an altitude, can't listen to instructions, talks over the controllers, can't get off the vacate runway and stop before getting into a taxiway. Causes this guy to have to jump on his brakes and the controller tell them to stop moving. Then keeps going and then goes into another runway. Now, I don't know if that runway is active, I don't know. But if it was, then potentially somebody's taking off and he gets right into the middle, hits a plane as they're trying to take off, and then he's dead and everybody in the other plane is dead. There's so many potential things going wrong with this guy, it's crazy. It would have been very easy for this guy to be in the intersection of this runway as somebody's trying to take off and everybody would have died, regardless of his braking situation. As I've said many times, flying is a privilege. As a passenger, as a pilot, It is a privilege. You're not entitled to do this. Now, I would, if I was an FAA person, and I'm not, and don't ever plan to be, and I don't think they'd like me because I wouldn't do well with all the paperwork, but it would be very hard for me if I was one of those guys to look at this exact situation and go, yeah, you're safe to go fly again under any circumstance. If this guy wants to go flying, what I think would probably be the only realistic way to do this, because clearly he loves flying, right? He's older and he loves flying, but he needs to have somebody there with him. So he'd have to go with a flight instructor. That would be my thought if I was an FAA person. Like, clearly this guy loves to fly. He was able to safely land the plane, so cool. But you'd say something like, hey, you can go, but you need to have a certified flight instructor with you. And that person is there to help you, keep you out of airspace. And in that circumstance where he's having a hard time, that instructor can be like, I'll handle the radios. No, do this, do that, and kind of like help the person get to where they want to go, and then they can do the flying and then land the plane. That, I think, would have to be the recommendation, because based off of all of these things that are going on, it'd be really hard for me to justify, yeah, I think you're safe to go fly and no problems. Or this isn't like a quick 2-hour flight, just a little checkout. No, that's not it. There's so many things that are wrong here. And is it possible that his brakes weren't working? Yes, but with just everything else, it just clearly is not a good fit for where he's at with his flying ability and flying into any airport. Because this is obviously a really busy airport, but if you put him into an airport that was not that busy and you went onto a runway, that is a problem. Now he's saying his brakes went out. Maybe, but everything else leads me to believe that he probably just didn't do something right, didn't brake in time or whatever. It's really sad. Hopefully they allow him to keep flying with a flight instructor and he can do something he enjoys and safely without impacting everybody else. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.